You've done some of the advanced work, yeah?
When you work with Christopher, you sometimes talk with him for an hour and a half, and then sometimes 2 hours, and then sometimes 3 hours. And we talked about athletic performance and training.
One of the things that athletes find is that when they start the method and they've got to retrain their breathing and get used to breathing shallow through the nose, their performance collapses for a while. They have to slow up before they get the result they want. It is really annoying.
That is also an exercise in itself mentally, because that's where a lot of self-judgment comes in. Oh, now I'm doing something worse. I remember when I was little and we had to learn how to swim, and then you could just do it. But then you move up to another level, and then the coach sort of brings in more stroke correction. If you put your hand in the water like this, it's a little better. And then you're doing all the stuff and thinking at the same time, and your performance gets worse. And you're like, oh, I don't want to learn this new method. It's making me slower. But then a couple of weeks later, you can do it better and you're faster. So it's something that I learned as a small child, that's sort of how it works, stroke correction. So now we're just doing correction for the breath. And it's way more complicated than just changing your stroke. It's the doing of the work. You have to get the breathing under control first and not worry too much about the stroke. Then once the breathing is under control, then you say, okay, now let's do a perfect stroke with this breathing. And you have to go way slow just to be able to keep up with it. And then you say, okay, can I swim a couple lengths doing this method, being really slow? Now, can I swim more lengths, being really slow and being perfect and doing this method? In the process, you lose some muscle mass, you lose some strength. And what I have noticed is as you start doing it better and better, the strength starts building back, but very differently. Because you're building it back with the cells of your body, understanding how it's going to receive oxygen. I can't explain it, but I'm swimming along and I'm like, okay, but I did this better already than I did last week, and I didn't change too much about it. And it's not like I went down and put my nose to the grindstone, tried to do it harder or do it more or something like that. The body automatically, if you just wait for the physiology to respond, that's where the improvement starts happening. And because you have to almost fall down on the hole and then learn how to dig yourself back out of it, that is a hard mental process to take on. The best advice I can give anybody who wants to have athletic performance is if you want to do athletic performance, you have to train your mind. As you're training your mind, that eventually trains every cell in your body. I feel like there's an intelligence to every cell in your body. You almost have to wait for the cells that don't understand it to die so that the muscle cells that can respond to the method will be able to grow and be in this mental capacity. Each one of the cells are working for you. Slowly but surely, you will get better. I see improvement every single time. At least once a week, I can really notice a big difference. First, you do a pause, swimming one length underwater. Then you do a pause, swimming one length and a little bit underwater. Then you go on to the next one, and you can see the progression that way. And that happens the same in your body. One of the things that is hard to learn in life is patience. We want to be good now. We want to have this now. Everything now, now, now. Watch all your TV shows right now. You want to perform right now. Why is it not improving? I did all this work. Why is it not getting any better? Well, the one that's going to have the most patience is eventually going to have the result. If you stop it prematurely and you say, this method is not going to work, you haven't done it long enough. But I could definitely say for a person who wants to have athletic performance is start training your brain not to judge where you're at all the time. I'm going to swim a competition in 2 weeks. I'm just going to see where I'm at. Because this is just a starting block. You just, right here, build the block at the very base of the pyramid. The more you build your blocks and the sturdier your pyramid becomes, it's like a big foundation. And you build blocks on top of that. And that blocks, you can imagine it in your brain as muscle cells, and you can imagine it as capacity. You can imagine it as speed and horsepower. It all comes together. Training your physiology is a much more in-tune process than just say, let's grind out some miles, or let's grind out some reps or lengths or whatever that might be. Understanding where your mind is sitting while you're doing these exercises and not to judge what happens all the time. is what's going to give you the result in performance. There's a big difference between being fit and being healthy. You can have a massive level of fitness, but to have good health, that comes with a level of fitness as well as health. People can run a whole marathon and drop dead at the end of it. And that's happened before. We've read all this stuff. If you are going to participate in a lot of exercise and movement, you have to make sure that you're at least breathing right when you're doing that.
In the old days, when they did physical exercise, they weren't under pressure as such. It was just an ongoing, every day you go out and you do the tasks that need to be done for the season. Built the physiology over time.
Right.
Repetition.
Repetition. And that is, I guess, the patience that we don't have anymore. We don't have patience for the repetition and the doing something over and to getting better at it slowly but surely. To build a house, you have to dig a foundation, which means you have to go down first before you can come up. Is your foundation actually going into the ground? I work with a lot of athletes. If they get injured and they cannot do their sport, well, first mentally it screws them up, but physically they start feeling worse because they were using exercise to build up their CO2 to help them feel better. And now that they're not doing that, they're feeling worse. We have to build the foundation from the bottom up. That's why when you start practicing this method and you have a control pulse below 25, you probably shouldn't be doing any physical exercise. You have to wait until your breath catches up with you being able to do activity with that. That's why this process is not overnight.
It takes time.
Yes.
And you have to work out how to get the mechanics to work, really. You know, you don't overdo it.
Exactly. You be nice to it. You have to build a nice, beautiful, loving relationship. You concentrate on that, the breath will come to the place, give you what you need from that. So then it can heal. Oxygen is needed for healing to happen. So if you're constantly blocking it off with a negative thought, you're never going to get oxygen to go in there.
Or aggressive thinking.
Exactly. Oh, now today we're going to get this done and we're going to do this and we're going to pound it into the ground military style. It's not like it's a Navy SEAL recruit. It's a little infant that needs to be nurtured.
It needs to be nursed for a while.
Exactly. I've heard Dr. Bruce Lipton talk about the cells in your body, and each one of the cells in your body is like a person. They look up to you internally, and all they want to do is please and grow for what it is that you say. So negative reinforcement is never going to help a situation like that. If you can control your government up there better, with a better mental attitude, it is going to be so much better for all the subjects or the cells in your body.
If you can decide what messages you're going to go with.
Exactly. And then you do the method to give it the nourishment that it needs.
Chemistry.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the chemistry. One of the things that happens if your breathing is with a control pause of less than 30 is that the cells are going into anaerobic respiration. When your control pause is over 30, there's aerobic respiration established, so the cells can aerobically respire.
Exactly.
So if you're in anaerobic respiration, you're producing lactic acid.
Exactly.
We're not supposed to be respiring anaerobically. And what will produce aerobic respiration? It is a control pause above 30. 35 is what we recommend minimum.
Exactly. Even during an intense bout of exercise, there is a really large percentage of that actually happening aerobically. And if you then run out of the oxygen and then you push it over the limit, then maybe you'll have some anaerobic activity. And then you start forming lactic acid. If you're not constantly bringing in the oxygen in the appropriate way, you can run a whole marathon and make sure that all the cells in your body is breathing, receiving oxygen and being in a state of aerobic.
And then it's not work, you see. You try to do this anaerobically, you don't have the energy to do the physical exercise. If you do it aerobically, you have masses of energy for it.
The amount of soreness that you get from exercise is a lot less if you do it properly. You're not supposed to get so sore that you can barely do anything.
But have you noticed that once you really get going with the shallow breathing and the exercise, and you warm up and you warm into the walking or the whatever you're doing, you get a sense of the oxygen going into muscles.
Right.
And then you kind of fly. You start to just go by yourself.
Exactly.
Exercise just happens. There's no work. It's effortless.
Especially if it's mild enough, you're not going to be sprinting the whole time and be able to just maintain that. But you can maintain a pretty significant level of a hike and not feel like I'm going to go out of breath when I go up a tiny hill.
That's right, yeah.
It's going to be adjusting. Your breath is going to be just adjusting a little bit and then following back to where it should be, and it will happen fast. But it's still a conditioning. It's not like you can all of a sudden just do that.
No. But once you get the right level of oxygen in the body and you start to see it happening, you can see the difference and you feel a lot better. Because you're talking to someone like me, I never did physical exercise because I couldn't, because I get an asthma attack.
Exactly. I can only imagine if somebody has got chronic fatigue, making that person exercise will make them so much worse. You're already tired to start with. Why are we going to make you more tired?
Yeah, but then actually to do exercise and then find that you get energy while you're doing the exercise, that's a complete shift. I mean, it's extraordinary. What would you say to someone else, especially an athlete, if they were considering how they could actually improve their performance?
What I would say to a person interested in athletic performance, and this is sort of difficult because one of the big things that does happen is you get a lot worse before you get better. And if you built your body for a long time on a method that's subpar and it's not in accordance with your physiology, the harder it's going to be. It's going to take some time. It's not like it's going to take you forever, but it's going to take a lot mentally and physically and time-wise. You're going to have to do a lot of work in order to do it. You're going to have to break down a lot before you have to build back up. The same way you have cleansing reactions and your body's trying to expel that, building your physiology in a proper way is also going to take time. And you are going to get a lot worse before you get better. But when you do get better, you can see how much better you can get. Because if you get to a point where you're just practicing the method and how much better you can feel, can you only imagine how much better you can get in athletics if you properly practice this? Whether you're a sprinter or whether you're a marathon athlete, it's really kind of a marathon to get your physiology on par. That's what you're essentially training. You're not, let me train miles and let me train all that. You're training your physiology to respond to the exercise in the appropriate way. It's definitely going to take a lot from you. It's something you have to relax into, but it's not just something, oh, I'm going to learn this method and quick, I'll be okay. Definitely not that. First, you have to get really good at the beginner class. You have to get really good at just being able to sit and hold pauses and see how that happens for you. Can you only imagine how much better you can get in athletics if you properly practice this? If you just wait for the physiology to respond, that's where the improvement starts happening.